There has been a string of car break-ins in our neighborhood lately. We have had cameras up for a couple of years now, so we checked the footage. Unfortunately, while we have the wannabe thieves on camera, there was nothing worth stealing in either mine or my husband's car. We have no idea who they are. The cops can't do much without an ID. One of them is wearing very distinctive shoes, though, so we have been on the lookout for an unusual pair of Nikes and who might be wearing them this year. Sucks when you can only watch someone break into your car. I know it's a little off topic, but we did also have a funny one we caught on camera. Our neighbor is a huge douche who can't handle his drink. He likes to listen to crappy mariachi music all night and into the early morning, which wouldn't be such a problem on the weekend, but he likes to do it on a Wednesday night. It really is a pain in the butt when you have to go to work in the morning. Our neighbor called the cops on him and we got to watch him get pepper sprayed in the face on camera. It was hilarious. I saw someone break into my car, take my sweater out of the front seat, stood there and smelled it for a solid 5 to 10 minutes, then put it back and left. I gave that sweater away that day. I got a security camera to keep tabs on my sick cat. The first day, I swear every time I connected she turned and stared directly at the camera. A couple who would drive by at random hours of the day for a full week would walk up to the house and look at my dogs, pit bulls, look into each window in the front and even check the back gate fence. The camera was older and had no notifications, so the only way we knew was the moment they decided to open up the door. While I was homesick and were subsequently rushed by my dogs, I heard the commotion and grabbed the only weapon I had, a bat, to find the front door open and what looked like a murder scene in my living room. Blood everywhere, all over the floor, the front door, the little entranceway, the window. Turns out I have two very good bois and the idiots went to the hospital to eventually be caught by police. They were going to take my dogs to be in dog fights, involved in a bunch of other seedy things. Drugs, prostitution. I wake up at 6 a.m. and just go through my security camera before heading to work. One day while looking through, I just saw my dog staring directly at my room. Skimmed through the different timelines. He did that for 30 minutes. Not sure why. Fell asleep on the couch that night. Had a bad incident of sleep paralysis. Watched the playback a few hours later of me trying to pull myself out of it. With the night vision being engaged, it looks really creepy because eyes glow combined with the slow blinking during the event. It's like watching a zombie version of yourself. I wasn't asleep, but it was 1 a.m. Both my Ring cameras go off, which, because of how they're angled, means only a full-sized adult can be in my yard. I check the notification. Dude starts walking up the sidewalk to my yard. Camera with floodlight kicks on. Dude instantly turns around like he was mistaken and goes on to the neighbor's yard. Neither us nor the neighbor knew him. Shady. Mostly I just get videos of cats visiting the edit. The full-sized adult thing. One camera is angled down. One is angled out from a raised porch. Thus they only both go off if there is movement in my yard taller than waist high. It's a great setup. Highly recommend. Wasn't asleep, but when I lived with my ex, we had a few security cameras and they send you alerts when there's motion detected. I was at work and got an alert that there was motion in the living room and I figured it was my ex coming home early, but I checked it anyway. Instead, I saw my dog standing in the middle of the living room staring at the wall. He stood there for a minute and then got on the sofa to sleep. Two things were terrifyingly off about that. 1. My dog was a puppy at the time and was crated when home alone. The crate is made of solid wood, metal grates, and has thick and heavy hook latches, so there's no conceivable way he could have opened the door. 2. He was kept in the office, which is located off the hall, and we kept the door separating the living room from the hall closed during the day to keep the room cooler for him. I looked back at the recording because I was very confused, and unfortunately, because the hall door was closed, I couldn't see how his crate got opened. But the hall door opened on its own and he walked out into the living room about 30 seconds later. The hall door was like a regular bedroom door. It closed with a knob latch and wouldn't have opened even if you pushed on it. There were no sounds aside from the normal house noises. No cars or people had been in view of the outside cameras since we'd left, and no other motion detections had went off. I installed some security cameras after some altercations with a horrible neighbor. Most I'd see was a squirrel, maybe a raccoon or two. Saw a fox once. That was cool. One night, I saw a guy walking up and down the street, passing my house over and over again. He seemed to limp more and more with each pass, before he collapsed. Later found out that guy was on a massive drug trip, and he died there, on the sidewalk, in front of my house. There was blood on that patch for weeks. Edit. Turns out he'd killed his then-girlfriend at the time whilst tripping out. Was kindly asked to mention it in the main post by a comment. When I was a poor college student, my wealthy cousin and his wife went on vacation and offered to let me house sit to give me a break from my 3 slovenly roommates. They live a few towns over in a very nice house with a huge front lawn and a fancy, tall iron fence and double gates. The fence and gates are about 11 feet high. You have to have a remote to open the gates. That first night I slept so well. I breakfasted like a king and then drove to school. I got back around 5, made a supper fit for a king, and settled down to write an econ paper. My cousin has a warning system for when someone drives, turns off the road and comes up to the gate. There's a chiming sound and you can look at screens in a couple of different rooms to see who it is, so that you can buzz them in. I was deep into my paper when I heard the chime. I was confused at first and checked my phone before I realized what it was. I looked from the sofa and could see a movement on the security screen. I stood up and got closer, and had a clear view of 2 women getting out of a white car. One tried to squeeze between 2 bars of the gate. Impossible. And then the other woman tried to boost her over the top of the gate. Hilarious. The top one fell, and even from the house I could heard swearing. I was about to press the intercom button and ask WTF was their problem, but I was chuckling at their antics and so just watched silently. They peered at the house intently from between the bars like a couple of jailbirds for a while. The skinnier one actually stripped down to her bra and panties and tried to squeeze through the bars again. No dice, butt and boobs were not allowing that to happen. More swearing. Then as the skinny one got dressed again, the bigger one went back to her trunk and got out a fluffing tire iron. As soon as she started fluffing with the hinges of the gate, I was on 911. The cops took too long and the women left. I showed the cops the video, but they couldn't get a license plate number. When my cousin and his wife returned the next week, I told them what happened and we watched the tape. He said that he had no idea who the women were, but his wife looked pissed. I packed up, thanked them for my vacation, and left. She divorced him that summer. We caught a neighbor who stole a package off our front porch that UPS had dropped off. It was an expensive car part. IDK what kind? My husband is a car nut. He was very quick to give it back when the police showed up at his door, because my husband wanted his car stuff rather than press charges and have it go to evidence. When I lived with my dad, he once had this ambitious raccoon that discovered he never locked the doggy door. So the raccoon would come in, eat a bunch of garbage, and run away before he'd wake up. So he put an automated doggy door in, so it only works if my dog went near it, with a collar designed to open it. I saw this one video of some guy in California that went to this house and spent 2 hours licking their security camera. Doorbell disappeared for a bit and then came back to resume the licking of the camera for another hour or so. I put up a camera in my room to record myself when that was a whole fad. I saw myself kicking and crying in my sleep. legitimate tears and also muttering something. I saw myself reach and grab my hair when I curled into a ball. I don't even remember having a nightmare or anything that night. Definitely a reason to be afraid of myself. My cousin installed some on his house because his wife and newborn son were alone while he worked. At nights, he connected it to his phone, and at around 3 a.m. there were two guys staggering around and just plopped down on the sidewalk across his house. He just thought they were asleep. Happens all the time as the neighborhood has bars. He comes home and finds out that they died. Rumor is that the two had a stroke and choked on their vomit. Next was a kid that slammed into his friend's speeding car. He was trying to jump over the car, but he was too slow. I live in an apartment unit right next door to the office. They installed a new security camera for their door, which covers a part of mine as well. Shortly after I moved in, the office manager knocked on my door a few days after the install and asked me to come look at something. She pulled up footage of the night before that showed a guy pacing in front of my door for 6 hours. He even left for a couple minutes and came back with something he tried to stick in my door frame a few times. I was asleep the whole time and heard nothing. Turned out to be a recent ex of a friend of mine. I'd only met him once. Still have no idea how he knew where I lived unless he followed her to my place once, as we live close by each other. Cops called, reports filed. They eventually found him. He had been on a pretty bad drug ban since their breakup, from what I heard, and has no recollection of being there. Meth is a hell of a drug. So I'm sitting in my living room at night. Just recently moved into my new flat. I'm in a basement flat. Own entrance. In a little townhouse on the edge of town. Quiet area. Lots of trees. Cheap rent and like no public transport or cell reception. I'm living alone for the first time. I just set up the security cameras and hooked them up to a new monitor. The old one was ancient and gigantic. Hadn't figured out where to put the monitor. I'd never had a security system before. It was, at the time, on my work desk, which was at the living room window. I noticed this slight yellow glow out the window out on the corner of my eyes. Slowly getting brighter, as it does. I notice on the camera that there's a huge butt shadow cast across my door. Visible from camera, to the left of the window. That looks kinda animal but weird proportions. I quietly garbage myself. It sits there for a while. Like a good 10 minutes. Moving just enough to make me wonder if I'm imagining it moving. There's a kind of whining, buzzing noise. But it's faint and I might be imagining it. I suddenly find religion. Then all of a sudden, there's a loud pop from inside my building. The glow goes instantly away. There's a sound like a really pissed cat and then really rapid footsteps. I'm in like full cardiac arrest at this point. Bathing in my own urine. Crying for my mum. Flash forward a week or so. I haven't been eaten by a cat shadow monster. Though I do have a sudden new interest in exorcisms. I meet the upstairs neighbors. Older couple. When they're having trouble getting a large package up the stairs, they offer me tea as thanks. I notice their cat sitting in the window. Its movement reminds me of something. And after a while I realize it's the shadow monster. I ask a few questions to round out the details. Turns out the neighbors had one of those lights on a sensor which turn on when they detect movement. Cat jumps up to ledge. Light turns on, but it was an eco light, so warmed up slow. It then went out, loudly. I'm too embarrassed, relieved to recant the story. So I make my excuses, leaving the nice couple upstairs with the impression that their new downstairs neighbor is a weirdo who stares at cats, has a really keen interest in light bulbs, and a predilection for nervous laughter. They don't invite me up for tea anymore, but they do ask if I'm okay every time they see me. My friend showed me footage that her home security camera got of a coked-out neighbor running into her door and shattering the glass with his head. The weird part was that he didn't get hurt, smashed the glass but came out without any damages to the head. When he approached her door, he stopped for a moment and then charged like a bull. I used to work for a company in California. Pretty small office just off the side of the road. Lots of gang activity around the area. They've got the Ring doorbell camera so they can safely tell if they can open the door at night. One night there's a group of guys hanging around looking at our property. We don't think much of it because they leave in about 10 minutes. Next day a guy shows up and just walks into our fabrication shop in broad daylight looking around. Never has this happened before. Our boss intervenes immediately. Boss, can I help you? Guy, oh shit, hey there. Are you guys hiring? Boss, no. You have 5 seconds to fluff off. Guy leaves in a mad dash. We called the cops and they find him walking down the street. 5 minutes later. Turns out the gang was planning on robbing our facility while we were on holiday leave and they'd assigned him to scout out the interior. Not asleep, but we were eating breakfast. There is a school down the street from our house. It's literally 2 houses down. Anyways, in the mornings there's lots of traffic and children with their parents to school. They walk past our house nearly every day and we never thought anything of it. Anyways, one day there was a kid who we caught on the security camera running and there was some guy chasing after him. It turns out he was trying to kidnap the kid and we had it on tape. The kid got to the school and told his teacher and police came and asked to see what we recorded via camera. Shit's crazy. Watch your kids. Edit. He got arrested for attempted kidnapping or something like that and the kid is totally safe now. Now we see his dad take him to school. Edit. Grammar. A random guy helped himself to my backyard. Thinking he was a thief, I was already picking my phone to call the non-emergency police line only to look back at my tablet and see him moving my pot plants. Only my pot plants, some of which are very heavy. He even stepped back a couple of times as if to survey his handiwork. Once he was seemingly happy with their new arrangement, he then left the same way he came. I have never seen this man before in my life. WTF. I woke up one morning and my front door was wide open. Scared the garbage out of me but couldn't figure it out as nothing was missing. Went back and looked at my camera and it turns out at around 4 a.m. the door just swings open for no reason. Never figured out why. Baby cam. Not security, but from my top post of all time. The camera only makes noises when it goes from day to night mode. So I have no idea why she was staring silently at it. Or for how long. https www.reddit.com/r/pics/comments/477bp/woke_up_and_3m_on_r_daughters/ I have an Amazon ring and on Halloween night a black cat laid down on my walkway. The shadow made it look like a huge cat, like a panther or something. Freaked me out until I zoomed in to see it was just a little black kitty. Obligatory not my story. Sorry. My brother got a new security camera and he was having trouble sleeping. He lives in an apartment building with a couple other people in the hallway. He kept waking up to a person trying to open his door in the middle of the night. He eventually found out it was a neighbor who got drunk a lot and was trying to get into the wrong apartment. The neighbor eventually went away. A couple weeks later he came home and there were a bunch of cops outside of his apartment. Turns out that his other neighbor, who had also gotten harassed by this guy in the middle of the night, had murdered the guy who kept knocking on my brother's door. My brother caught it all on his security camera. He turned it over to the police, and the neighbor got arrested and went to jail. Saw a woman talking to herself stealing my trash. I was so confused the week I moved in, because every day I threw trash away my can was empty and I kept convincing myself I was just losing it. Finally got my cameras up and realized what was happening. Turns out the lady went to every can up and down multiple streets every night taking and throwing away trash. Found out she had some mental health issues and lived around the corner. moved the cans to the backyard instead of the side of the house after all that. My neighbor told me years ago that when she checked the footage from her security cams outside her front house, she found a guy coming in her yard picking her flowers and sticking them down the front of his underwear. He was never seen again. Just once, my cat killed a baby bunny by eviscerating it. One time my neighbor taped a bomb threat to my apartment door. When I walked out the door to go to school, I was in 5th grade at the time. I was like, WTF is this? Quote, it was a drawing of an explosion surrounding me and my family with the word white in big black letters. We lived in a town with mostly Asian American people and we were the only white people. Well, I'm 1/4 Filipino and 1/8 Japanese, but mostly white. So we set up a camera and this neighbor started pouring gallons of gasoline in our driveway, trying to set it on fire. He got kicked out and it was later revealed that he was dealing with severe schizophrenia and refused to take his meds. Neighbors have security cameras that caught 2 people outfitted to look like Jehovah's Witness reps that were actually armed thieves. The pair did several burglaries in the area before reports to the police from neighbors caught them in the act. P.S. Enjoy your cake day. Op. Near midnight my car alarm was triggered. For weeks never could find who did it. So I put up a cameras up to see what happened. 3 nights of not getting anything. I pissed myself when I found a raccoon versus squirrel wrestling match at my front door edited. Wow, for my first ever post on Reddit, 261 upvote. Thank you. One time there were a few hedgehogs in the garden. Spooky. One night a bunch of cars in our neighbor were broken into, including my son's. We checked our security cameras and saw the guy going through my son's car, and then he walked over to my neighbor's house and up onto their back deck and stared through their French doors for about 15 minutes before leaving.